Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my League Pass rankings for the 2023-2024 NBA season. You now might be saying, wait, what exactly are League Pass rankings? For me, League Pass rankings are a very subjective list of the teams I would like to watch most in order when it comes to this season. Now, there's a few important things to note here. First of all, I love watching basketball. I'm a total basketball junkie. I watch basketball all the time. So even the team that ranks 30th, which is last in this video, I'm still very, very excited to watch that team. I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm not looking forward to watching any of these 30 teams. I am. I'm very, very excited. But there are some reasons why I prefer some other teams over different ones. And usually that has to come with player movement and maybe, seeing some stars in different cities or seeing, this role player here or some of the rookies in some of their new destinations. So those things all come into effect on my League Pass rankings. Hopefully you guys do enjoy. Again, this is fully subjective. There's really no rhyme or reason other than, hey, I like to watch this team, or I would really like to watch this team because they have this player, this, that, and the other thing, right? So for me, it's all subjective. I want to hear from you guys who your League Pass teams are this next year. What teams are you most looking forward to watch? Make sure to comment that down in the comment section. And then also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content here at Utility Sports. And without further ado, let's jump into my 30th ranked team, and that is the Chicago Bulls, coming in dead last in my League Pass rankings this year. And, for Chicago, it's not that they're a bad team. In fact, they're probably a middling team, but when it comes to the watch factor of, hey, how excited am I to turn this team on when it comes to an April basketball game or a March basketball game, I'm just not sure if it's going to be super high. I'm not sure if my motivation is going to be there for Chicago. Now listen, I'm still going to watch 30 plus games of the Bulls this year. I'm still very excited to watch some of their young guys, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, to name a couple of guys. I think Dalen Terry might get a bigger role this year, which I'm excited about. Javon Carter, I think, was a pretty solid signing for them. DeRozan's fun to watch. LaVine's fun to watch if he's still there. We'll see what happens. Maybe there's still some trade that could shake up the league a little bit here at this point. But for the Bulls specifically, there hasn't been a ton of player movement. They didn't have a first-round pick this year. So for me, when it comes to how excited am I to turn this team on League Pass, it's just a little bit lower naturally. This team's not super great. They don't have a high-end superstar player that makes me tune in or want to tune in every single night, that is. And then on top of that, there hasn't been a ton of that top-end player movement. Again, I'm very excited to watch the Bulls, don't get me wrong. But comparatively to the other 29 teams, they're at the bottom of my list this year. The very next one, the Milwaukee Bucks, coming in at 29 on my League Pass rankings. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, for my job, I actually have to watch the Milwaukee Bucks quite a bit. So that comes into effect here a little bit, where I'm already naturally going to be watching them. So League Pass probably won't be my biggest focus when it comes to Milwaukee. The other thing is this team has a lot of the returning pieces. Now, I do think it's going to be interesting to watch some of their young guys, Chris Livingston, of course, Marjon Beauchamp as well. They've had a pretty nice collection of second-round picks come in, as well as Beauchamp in round one last year. I do like what Milwaukee's done on the margins of trying to improve their team and stay young and fresh. But for the most part, for me with Milwaukee here, it comes down to the fact that, look, the top end of their rotation is very similar. Now, I think with a different coach, it does bring some intrigue to me. What is Adrian Griffin going to do with this team? How is he going to coach them differently than Mike Budenholzer? That's going to be a very fun storyline to follow and watch and keep our eyes on. Number 28, I have the Toronto Raptors. And Toronto, they did lose Fred VanVleet, which I do think shakes some things up. And I really love watching Scotty Barnes. I think this team is extremely talented. Now, I think one thing that could really shake this up, it's very important to know, I'm recording this the night of July 11th. So it's very possible that a Pascal Siakam trade were to come to fruition, the Raptors would probably skyrocket up my board. And it's not because I don't like watching Pascal Siakam. It's more so about, okay, well, what would they get back for Siakam? And that would probably change my rankings quite a bit here. Seeing some of the new young faces there that they would likely get in a deal around Pascal. But assuming Siakam is there, listen, the Raptors at 28, I still am going to watch this team. I'm going to enjoy watching this team a ton. But when it comes down to it, am I super excited to watch this team compared to the other teams that I have above them? The answer to that is no. I think Schroeder was a really nice signing for them. They saved a lot of money not keeping VanVleet. I think that was smart for the organization. Jakob Poeltl, I think, is a very underrated center. Now he's paid very handsomely. I'm not sure if I would have necessarily given him that exact same contract that they did, but I understand it from a perspective of, hey, we just traded for this guy, we have to keep him. And their team is good. I love watching OG Anunoby. Scottie Barnes, of course, one of my favorite young players in the league. I think the Raptors are a very good team. When it comes to their overall pieces, we'll see if they mesh well together this year. Perhaps Schroeder can help that a little bit more than Fred VanVleet. But ultimately, the Raptors come in at 28 on my list, which leads me to 27 here. And this is a team that I wanted to move up higher, but I think with how the league is looking right now, there's just so many teams I want to watch on every single night of the NBA season. And the Pelicans were kind of an odd man out team here at number 27. I like this team. I like their pieces. McCollum's extremely fun to watch. When Zion's on the court, they are so fun to watch. I was at the game actually when Zion Williamson threw down the windmill dunk that ultimately was on the cover of NBA 2K at one point. Listen, this Pelicans team is still extremely enjoyable to watch. I think Dyson Daniels is going to have a bigger role this next season. Trey Murphy's one of the up-and-coming young, really good wings in the league as well. I think he's going to have a massive season this year. Herb Jones, one of my favorite players to watch in the league as well when it comes to what he does on the defensive side of the floor. Ingram, pure bucket getter. I mean, I like this team. I hope you guys can tell how much I like watching these players. Number 26, a team that they did make some changes. Not sure if it draws me to the television a ton, but it's the Cleveland Cavaliers at 26 here. You know, Max Strus, George Niang, good players. I'm not sure if those are the guys that are going to make me go, yeah, I would rather watch the Cleveland Cavaliers than my favorite team. Now, I'm going to do that a lot. I'm going to watch a ton of Cavaliers games. And listen, they've already got the fun, exciting pieces. Mitchell, of course, last year had a crazy 70-plus point performance. But then you also look at guys like Darius Garland, who I think is one of the most fun players to watch in the league. Last year, I remember him lighting up the Minnesota Timberwolves for 50 points. And he had Taurean Prince on skates in the fourth quarter of that game where he just went completely unconscious. But then you also look at guys like Evan Mobley, who's one of the best defenders in the league, period. Not young defenders, period, best defender. Arguably in the league at this point, he's, I think, due for another big step forward. And then you also look at, Jared Allen, I think, as a rim presence big, really solid player. I think he's going to have a really nice season this year. Hopefully it's with the Cavaliers. Who knows? Maybe there's a trade yet to come there as well. But I think the Cavs, good team. I think that they're a better team with some of their signings, but those signings didn't excite me a ton. So when it comes to, hey, how interested am I watching the Cavaliers? I'm very, very interested. But in relation to the other teams in the league, I'm a little less so than some of the others. The New York Knicks did make an addition. They brought in Dante DiVincenzo, and I think that's a really fun storyline as Villanova seems to have a little bit of a get-together there in New York at Madison Square Garden because they now have Jalen Brunson, who's one of my favorite players in the league to watch with his ability to pivot and get to spots on the court. He's very good at using his stride stop to stop his momentum. Pivot on a dime and get to advantageous spots on the floor, draw fouls. Because of that, I love watching that brand of basketball where he's a very skilled technical game. I love watching that. But then you also think about Josh Hart, who seemingly dives on every single loose ball that has ever existed. Dante DiVincenzo is going to do a lot of that dirty work for them too. I really like that trio, and then not to mention some of the other pieces that they have there. Mitchell Robinson is a fun player to watch. Now, Obi Toppin, listen, I'm a Dayton Flyers fan, so Obi Toppin not being in New York draws my attention down a little bit to the Knicks. Now, it's not like it makes their team significantly worse. There hasn't been, and there wasn't going to be a huge role for Obi Toppin again this season. Listen, Julius Randle's a really good player. For me, he's not one of my favorite players to watch in the league. A little bit of that, kind of dribble, heavy isolation. I'm going to bully my way through a guy's chest and try and finish. Similarly to how I kind of knocked the Bucks a little bit for Giannis with that play style. Julius Randle plays a very good brand of basketball, don't get me wrong, but the Knicks, because of that, they're not one of my favorite teams to watch. They come in at 25 here on my League Pass rankings. And let's move to 24, the Charlotte Hornets. And this is kind of hard for me because I love watching LaMelo Ball. I think Brandon Miller is a very good young prospect. I think he's going to have a very good career. He can really shoot the basketball. I think he's going to be awesome off of LaMelo driving kicks, assuming LaMelo continues to do that a little bit more than he did this past year. I know he was out with injuries, and I think that kind of derailed his season a little bit. But ultimately, Charlotte here, the reason that they're not higher is they don't put a ton of rim pressure on besides Miles Bridges. And for me, I love watching kind of the dynamism between slashing, kicking out to shooting, and kind of having that blend of offense. I think for Charlotte, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge this year. Nick Smith Jr. is not going to be fun to watch, in my opinion, as a rookie. Now, I still think that there's a very good ceiling in the league for Nick Smith Jr. if he can live up to all of his hype. Now, Summer League tonight, he was fantastic, both Smith Jr. and Brandon Miller. But I think with these young guys, there's going to be some learning curves, and there's just the overall team balance isn't that great, in my opinion, when it comes to getting to the rim and scoring at the rim. Miles Bridges, they're going to rely on him quite a bit to do that for them. We still have a question on where PJ Washington is going to be playing next season. Is it going to be Charlotte? Could it be another team on an offer sheet? We'll see. But the Hornets at this point, I still think a fun team to watch, but for me, I'm just a little bit lower on them because, one, I don't love watching Steve Clifford coach teams, and then just the overall team balance isn't phenomenal in my opinion, which bumps them down a little bit here for me. Moving into 23, it's the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Nets are one of the more fascinating teams in the NBA right now because of kind of their overall changes in the last calendar year. You think about the team that had Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. They're now at a point where we're still trying to see if they can resurrect Ben Simmons' career. Mikal Bridges is developing and blossoming into a star in the making, which I love to see. Cam Johnson, they signed him back. Like that for them. Spencer Dinwiddie, very fun player to watch. He loves to talk crap and backs it up a decent amount of the time, which I know people are going to maybe scoff at, but he's fun to watch. And for me, I think my favorite player to watch here outside of Mikal Bridges, and I do like watching Ben Simmons when he's on the court, but I'm not sure if we're going to get that version or not this year. But really, the big one to watch for me is Nick Claxton, who a year ago, last summer, I said he was due for a breakout year. I picked him as one of my potential most improved player finalists for that award. Did not end up winning that award, but I think he had a really strong resume for it because of what he did on the defensive side of the court. And I think he's due for another step forward this year. I think he deserves some Defensive Player of the Year consideration. For me, I would have voted Brook Lopez had I had a vote last year. But Nick Claxton, very good player. Someone who I think is growing and kind of emerging each and every year. And I'm hoping to see some more steps forward from him. Hopefully some offensive steps forward this year. But if he continues to progress defensively, we might be looking at one of the premier defenders in the NBA from the big man position. Moving into my number 22 spot, that's the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think the Memphis Grizzlies, for me, I think there's some questions. When John Morant's on the court, this team is must-watch television. The issue is we're going to start the first 25 games without him, which is okay because I still think that there's going to be a lot of fun things to watch from this team. Jaren Jackson Jr. loves to block every single shot into oblivion. If he doesn't send it into the first row, it's almost a disappointment. That's how fun he is to watch when it comes to his weak side rim protection. And I think the way that they utilize him, Taylor Jenkins does a very good job coaching that team. Very well-ran organization at this point. I think that every single decision that they've made in the last 12 to 24 months has been rather sound from a GMing standpoint. Because of that, they've got a good team. Desmond Bane, really fun to watch. He's a total gunner in transition. I think he's a really nice player. People were surprised about the money he got. Did not shock me at all. And then once Ja's back, this team's going to be awesome. But the player I really am excited to see there is kind of the revitalization of Grit and Grind. We got Grit and Grind 2.0 with Marcus Smart, who has really developed his career off of being a grinder, being a guy who is going to get up in your grill, pick up 94 feet. I think is a better connector offensively than people give him credit for. He's a really creative passer. And I think their overall decision-making this offseason, I know they gave up a lot to get him, going from Tyus Jones and 2 first-round picks to Marcus Smart. I know it sounds crazy, but there's a lot of value, but they got significantly better because at the end of games, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart can all play together, and it's actually a pretty good defensive combination because Bane, big, strong player, doesn't have the longest of arms, obviously, but he's built like a truck. And then Marcus Smart, extremely versatile. We know how switchable defensively he is. Those two guys kind of make up for some of Ja Morant's shortcomings on that end of the floor when it comes to point of attack defense. So because of that, I think the Grizzlies are a very fascinating watch this year. And at 21, I have the Atlanta Hawks. And I think Quinn Snyder might give us a masterclass in what it looks like to try and make 2 ball-dominant guards work together this year. We'll see how Trae Young and DeJounte Murray look, but the talent is definitively there. Trae Young, one of the best pick-and-roll passers in the entire sport right now. He's so dynamic when it comes to scoring and creating for others. Of course, he does that in a lot of dribbles, but when you're as good as he is, the coach should say, yeah, go dribble the basketball, go make decisions. You're very, very good at it. And I think Atlanta also has a really good blend of young talent. I think if you look at the Hawks' actual roster, there's a lot of nice pieces for that team that people don't really give credit for. You think about AJ Griffin, who I loved as a draft prospect a year ago. Could not believe he went outside the lottery. The Hawks did a great job snatching him up at 16. You also then look at some of the other talent on the roster. I think Kobe Buffkin could be a really nice connector for the team. I think he can play alongside Trey. I think he can play alongside DeJounte. He can play on the ball, off the ball. And he defensively does a lot of the stuff that I think would make him and DeJounte a really intriguing defensive backcourt duo moving forward. And then you look at some of the other pieces, Onyeka Okongwu, getting off of John Collins. Like, yes, it hurts from a value perspective. You gave up a pretty good player for basically nothing, but it does open up some more minutes likely for Jalen Johnson, who I like watching as well. So this Hawks team, at 21, this kind of shows how strong the league is right now. I'm very excited to watch the Hawks, and I have them at 21 in my league pass rankings. Number 20, the Lakers here, and anytime you can watch LeBron James, it's pure fun. Even if you don't like LeBron, you can understand his IQ, intelligence, the ability to dissect a defense, whether it's off of a live dribble or getting a team into a set. LeBron James is one of the best minds we've ever seen in the NBA, and I think he's such a special talent. Even at this age, he's still one of the premier players in the NBA. Now, of course, there's some rumors right now that he has a 97 overall in 2K. That might be a little high. We're probably going to have a video coming out on that very, very soon on the channel, probably within a day or so, that I think you guys are going to want to check out. But when it comes to the Lakers here, outside of LeBron, Anthony Davis, one of the better defenders to be in the league right now. And of course, his rim protection is special. His lateral mobility on the perimeter is very, very good for his size. And I think in addition to that, you're also looking at kind of a filled out roster, something they did not have a year or two ago, where guys like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, D'Angelo Russell, who I hate watching, by the way. D'Angelo Russell probably pulls this team down about 7 or 8 spots because of his indecisiveness and just kind of the inconsistent play you get from him. But the Lakers, for me, I think they've got fun pieces to watch. I'm interested to see if Max Christie or Maxwell Lewis play much for them this year. But I think the Lakers, just in general, like down the stretch of LeBron's career here, I'm going to try and tune into as many games as possible because, there's only one LeBron James. You're not going to see another one of him ever again, probably. So try and enjoy it while it's here, even if you're not a huge LeBron guy. At number 19, the Phoenix Suns, and this team might be a lot higher for a lot of other people because the idea of watching Booker, Durant, and Beal probably is very appealing. And you look at NBA metrics on viewership, usually the teams with multiple stars lead the league in viewership, and I understand why. People love to watch the stars. For me, I think the three of them aren't the best blend of stars, and it's almost the same discussion we had about Charlotte, where the team doesn't have a ton of rim pressure. Durant doesn't shoot at the rim very much anymore. In fact, he shot less shots at the rim this past season per game than Draymond Green, which should be a concern. Bradley Beal, 47% of his shots come from the mid-range area. And then we know Devin Booker, he can get to the rim, but he's predominantly a jump shooter as well. So I think for me, again, if we're looking at the balance of, hey, where do these guys score? How do they get, baskets? It's kind of the same old adage that the Suns had issues with Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson of, does this team get to the rim enough? And the answer to that's probably not. But I do like all their signings that they make. Keita Bates-Diop's going to stand out to me. Toumani Kamara's had a pretty good summer league so far. We'll see if he gets minutes early in his career. Okogie's a fun defender to watch. Ultimately, the Suns, I could see them growing higher and higher depending on the performance of some of those minimum level players. They're going to have to get a lot out of those guys to be a high-end championship caliber team, in my opinion. But if they have one or two of those guys really hit and pop off next to Durant, Booker, and Beal, then there's a good chance. Yuta Watanabe, by the way, have to mention him here. Absolutely love Yuta Watanabe, and I think he's a fantastic player for Phoenix to have on their roster. Going on to number 18, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers. And this might be a little low for the Clippers because anytime you can watch Kawhi Leonard and Paul George play, it's an absolute treat. I was actually at a game their first year together, and the two of them combined for 90-plus points. It was one of the most unreal performances I've ever seen in person on a basketball court at any level of the game. The two of them were pure assassins, getting shots off in the mid-range, three-point, off of self-creation, out of pick-and-roll usage. It was all unreal and surreal to see those two players play together. The issue is we don't see them play together very often, and that's partially why they're as low as they are on this list. And I also am a little skeptical on their odds of trading for James Harden. If they were to bring James Harden in, I would probably be glued to my television set watching this team pretty much every single night, because I think Harden is the missing piece there with the Clippers. I think that everything that team has, they need one organizer, creator, someone who can get them into offense, run some pick and rolls for them at a very high level. And James Harden is one of the best pick and roll guards to ever play in the NBA. So I think the Clippers, if they were able to get Harden, would completely change my perspective on not only wanting to watch them this year, but their actual odds at a title. I think that Harden there could give them a legit shot at a title. I know people are going to scoff at that and say, well, Harden always chokes in the playoffs. You have to remember, he'd be the third option on this team when it comes to a scoring standpoint behind Kawhi and Paul George. We've seen Kawhi Leonard get it done at a high level. Paul George is the number 2. I know he hasn't gotten it done yet, but he has the talent. He has the skill to get it done. I think Harden, as a facilitator type, we've seen how dominant his teams could be in the playoffs before. The Brooklyn Nets, before all of their injuries, I think are a great example of that. The Clippers would be really fun to watch with Harden there in LAC. Number 17 now, and this is a prime example of how loaded the league is right now in terms of talent and how excited I am to watch all of these teams, because in a standard year, this rebuilding Wizards team with Bilal Coulibaly probably having a pretty good usage rate, Jordan Poole probably going for 25 points a night, Kyle Kuzma getting his looks. This team is going to lose a ton, but they're going to be very, very fun doing it. And to only finish at 17 on my list is kind of ridiculous. I wish that this team was higher on this list, honestly, because for me, the Wizards, I'm going to be so dialed into watching this team play. Tyus Jones, I think, is going to give them a good amount of organization. This team's going to be a little bit better than people are expecting if they keep Tyus Jones and some of those pieces going into the season. They've got some talent. Daniel Gafford blocks shots. Denny Avdia, Corey Kispert, I think 2 good wing players in this league. They're not going to be great. They're not going to win a lot of games. In fact, if I had to guess, they probably finished last in the NBA in terms of win-loss record. But I still think that this team is going to be competitive. I think there's going to be nights where if Wes Unseld Jr. can put together a competitive defense, this team's going to be able to score the ball a bit. And I'm very interested to see how they utilize Bilal Coulibaly. I think that's going to be the most important thing to watch for this season for the Wizards. I think his ceiling is massive. He's got sky-high potential. We'll see if he can live up to that for Washington or not. But I think he's already flashed a ton in the Summer League, and I'm very excited to watch this team going forward. At 16, I have the reigning champion Denver Nuggets, and I think it really all hinges on one player, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. That's Nikola Jokic, one of the best premier passers we've ever seen in the NBA, and no, not just for a big man. I'm talking period. He is such a phenomenal passer, really makes the game a lot of fun to digest and watch and see the way that he works. You know, it just feels like no defensive coverage, no scheme, no concept can really screw with him. And that level of mastership, that level of expertise is just a joy to watch. You know, you could talk about Jamal Murray, talk about Michael Porter Jr. literally not wanting to get assists 90% of the time. You know, TikTok, he's always fun to see on there, some of his highlights too, and watching him play. I got to watch the Nuggets actually twice in person this past year, and Michael Porter Jr. lives up to the hype. There is not a shot that he does not like. This team is fun. The Nuggets, not only are they really good, but they're a lot of fun to watch. And at 16, you know, it feels low, honestly, but there's just so many fun teams this year, and I think player movement for me is going to be the real kind of indicator of, hey, why am I so excited to watch some of these teams going forward? What do I have to learn about these new moves? But at 16, the one thing I'm watching from the Nuggets as well is, what does Peyton Watson look like this year during the actual season? I think he could be a real big hinge player who has some serious upside as kind of a two-way wing at some point if he lives up to that height. Number 15, it's the most prolific offense in the NBA, or at least the most prolific reigning offense in the NBA. We'll see if they can live up to that again in year 2, but I think their addition of Colby Jones is going to help them for sure in that. Sasha Vezenkov coming over from the EuroLeague, another player who can space the floor for them, knock down threes, but he's a smart cutter. I think he's going to fit perfectly in around Sabonis. And De'Aaron Fox, I think the big thing about Sacramento is, can they sustain their clutch play from a year ago? Of course, De'Aaron Fox was the clutch player of the year. There was no question or doubt about it in my mind. He was lethal once the fourth quarter started. Now, for Sacramento, when it's a league that, hey, blowing out a team in the fourth quarter goes a long way and winning by 3, 4, 7, 6, whatever number of points, can they sustain that? Typically, teams that play very, very well in the clutch, there's some typical regression the following year because it's very hard to maintain that because it's such a small sample size of clutch play. The Kings had a lot of clutch play this past year, but still, comparatively to the overall body of work, it's still a small sample size. So I think for Sacramento, it's a make or miss league. If they're missing shots down the stretch of games, this team is not going to be nearly as prolific. But I do think that they have the talent to replicate what they did as long as the clutch shooting maintains, which I'm not saying it won't, because this team, again, very talented. De'Aaron Fox broke out in a huge way. Sabonis had a great year. I think Mike Brown's utilization of him as a screener, specifically in some of those dribble handoff zoom action sets that they run, everything was really, really well put together for Sacramento. Mike Brown had a great first year there. Now, second-year coaches typically have a little bit of a regression year because teams understand and learn, oh, what's this team trying to do? We'll see if that bites Sacramento at all, but I think this team is still going to be very fun to watch. Number 14, Minnesota. The Timberwolves come in at 14th on my list because, first of all, Anthony Edwards is one of the league's premier young superstars in the making. He's so fun to watch. I love Jaden McDaniels. By the way, his nickname is the Seatbelt. You guys got to start calling him that because I've been saying that now for a while. Let's get that name out there, the Seatbelt for Jaden McDaniels, because he puts guys in clamps and locks them down. They're not going anywhere. And that's what Jaden McDaniels does. I think he's going to be the most improved player in the league this year. I think he's going to win that award. I think that, honestly, he's going to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, which is awesome to see from a wing defender. He's such a joy. And then Rudy Gobert, there's a lot of people who don't like Rudy Gobert. I think if you understand the game and understand what Gobert does for a team, you really, really love watching him play because he does all of the little things very, very, very well. For a player who's not extremely skilled, for him to have had the career he's had is remarkable, and it really speaks volumes to his work ethic, his effort, and how hard he's willing to fight for his team. So because of that, the Wolves are right there. We'll see if Karl Anthony Towns, pulls down my ranking a little bit, but for the Wolves 14, I felt justified with that. 13, I have the Utah Jazz, and this team has 3 rookies I'm very excited to watch in Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, and Bryce Sensabaugh. I think that they had a very good draft for themselves. Keontae George has been lighting up the summer league. No surprise there. He's an absolute bucket getter, shot maker. Now it's going to come in waves, right? There's going to be times where he's missing a lot of those shots, and there's going to be times where he's unconscious and you can't guard him. That was literally my entire draft evaluation on him was when he's hot, he's hot. When he's not, he's not. So we'll see if that sustains throughout the season or not. My guess is probably not frequently. He'll probably shoot around 40% from the field, but when he's making them, he's really, really fun. And then on top of those rookies, which, by the way, I think Taylor Hendricks in Utah is a really awesome fit. I think in addition to that, getting John Collins for as cheap as they did was a very smart move. Lauri Markkanen, really skilled player. We'll see if he can sustain his improvements from a year ago and if he can sustain that shot making that was unreal. Clearly a rhythm player with the ball in his hands, just played a lot better. And then you look at Walker Kessler, who I think is really the important piece here. For all the things I talked about with Rudy Gobert, Walker Kessler does a lot of those similar things of, understanding, hey, I have to roll hard here to help out my teammate, or I got to set a good screen, sit in here and make sure I get good contact to open up my teammate for a jump shot. And then defensively, he's he's going to grow into one of the penultimate rim protectors in the league as a drop coverage big. So I think that Utah, for me, very fun team to watch, and I'm very excited to watch them this upcoming season. 12, I have the Orlando Magic. And for Orlando, I think that their scheme and what their kind of identity is through their team building is very fascinating at this point. They've got a vast collection of sizey playmakers who can defend across the board. You think about their most recent draft with guys like Anthony Black and Jet Howard, both 6'7", 6'8" type players. Anthony Black, I think one of the smartest players in this past draft class. I loved him, had him top 5 on my big board, top 6 on my big board. I need to actually go back and check to see if he was 5 or 6 with Taylor Hendricks. The two of them were very, very close. And I love Orlando. I love what they have on their roster. Of course, Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, those are the two headliners. But outside of that, they've got the other pieces that I think are going to be really entertaining to watch. And I just like the overall identity of this team. I think Jamal Mosley's done a very good job overseeing the development of some of these young guys, and I'm really looking forward to see where this team goes in the future. The Detroit Pistons are my number 11 team, and for me, ultimately, with Detroit here, I think it really hinges on seeing Cade Cunningham back in a Pistons uniform with the combination of Jaden Ivey, who I think when he's playing the way that he's supposed to play, can get downhill against anybody in the league at any time. He's going to be an instant paint touch guy, and I think if he has the right coach who's working through him on what his expectations should be in an offense, it's going to be paint touches, paint touches, paint touches. And then you also add in the fact that they got another intriguing, athletic, freaky, smart player in Ausar Thompson, who understands, look, I can put pressure on the rim, I can get paint touches and kick out of that. And I think that understanding of what his role should be off of Cade Cunningham gives them a really intriguing combination of length, athleticism, dynamism, and then playmaking between those three players in Cade, Jaden, and Ausar. And then outside of that, I think Jalen Duren's one of the best young bigs in the league. I think his ceiling is immense. Before the draft, I called him the next Bam Adebayo. And I think offensively, there's a lot of ways to grow there yet. I think he's got to get significantly better with dribble handoffs. I think his feel as a playmaker has got to get a lot better. He's not there offensively, but I think defensively is really where that comparison makes the most sense, because he's switchable, he's lengthy, he's actually bigger than Bam Adebayo. I think he's going to be a better shot blocker, rim protector than Bam Adebayo, even though he's had his own moments. Of course, Bam, one of the better defenders in the league, period. I think that when it comes down to it for Detroit, their overall team is going to really hinge on how good Jalen Duren can be defensively and how good Cade Cunningham can be offensively. And I think the Pistons, they have the pieces. I'm excited to see Monty Williams coach this team. We'll see how everything gets put together, but I think they got the right coach for the job now finally. And I think that I can really believe in the future of the Detroit Pistons. This year is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Number 10, and we got a little bit of projection here with the Miami Heat, because not only are the Heat a fun team to watch with Eric Spoelstra running more zone than any other team in the league at about a 25% rate this past year, but I'm suspecting Damian Lillard to ultimately be a member of the Miami Heat, which gives Eric Spoelstra a fun little challenge and something that we have not seen ever in the NBA, which is a good defense with Damian Lillard on the floor. Damian Lillard's never been a part of a really good defensive team, and I think Miami would be the perfect spot to change all of that. Their utilization of zone, their full court pressing. I think if Damian Lillard buys into some of that stuff, Eric Spoelstra is the perfect mastermind to build a very good defense. Not just a good one, a very good one around Damian Lillard. And with his deep range shot making, the ability to stretch out the floor, handle in a pick and roll, and really be the hub of an offense as a self-creator and a creator for others, which I think Dame's underrated at. The Heat become one of the best teams in the league, not only just like kind of this fun, frisky team that found its way to the finals, they become a serious, real contender again this year with a legitimate shot at winning the NBA title with Damian Lillard there around Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. Of course, people in the playoffs call him Himmy Butler. He's had some marvelous performances as well. This team's going to be a lot of fun to watch. We'll see what happens. Maybe Dame doesn't end up getting routed to Miami, but at this point I'm kind of operating under the idea that at some point he will. Number 9, I have the Philadelphia 76ers at this point on this list, and I know people are going to be a little surprised by that and say, whoa, the 76ers haven't had a ton of player movement. Why are you so excited to watch Philadelphia? Well, first of all, the player movement that they've had, I think, has been pretty smart. They already have guys like DeAnthony Melton, PJ Tucker, two really good defenders. Of course, PJ Tucker gets a lot of the praise. I think DeAnthony Melton, a very underrated player in general for what he brings to an NBA team. But then they brought in one of the most vocal, fun to watch defensive players to ever play in the league, and that's Patrick Beverley. Please remember, listen, like 10 months ago, the guy walked onto the court with a camera in his hands to tell the ref that he missed a call. That is hilarious. And I think with Patrick Beverley, you're going to get a little bit more of a spectacle here in Philadelphia, and I still think it makes their team better. I think the trio of him, Melton, and PJ Tucker around potential lineups of Harden and Embiid, or if you have Embiid plus Harris, Embiid plus Maxey, whatever the lineup ends up looking like, you've got 3 good defenders you can employ at any moment in the game. I think that's really good for Philadelphia. I think that with James Harden likely back, the best pick and roll duo in the league, Harden plus Embiid, is going to be still a huge problem for other teams. Harden, the best pick and roll passer arguably in the NBA, and then Embiid, of course, so dominant on the short roll, but also really good on the long roll when he does it. Doesn't do it a ton, but when he does, he's really, really good at it. This team's going to be very good to watch, very fun to watch. I think Nick Nurse, I'm interested to see what he coaches this team to do defensively. Are they going to prioritize deflections and steals like what they did in Toronto, or are they going to prioritize get down in a stance, make these guys work? I'm very interested to see what that looks like, which is why they do come in the top 10 here for my League Pass rankings. At number 8, the Indiana Pacers, and there's no surprise for my Pacers fans on the channel. You guys know that the Pacers are one of my favorite teams to watch. Tyrese Halliburton, such a cerebral player, honestly one of the smartest players in the entire league. Just a savant when it comes to playmaking. I can't believe that there's a discussion right now that questions if Tyrese Halliburton's an elite playmaker. He is one of the premier playmakers in the league because he understands the ability. He can use his handling and his playmaking to get paint touches and open up the entire court for other players. He's also one of the best hit-ahead passers, which typically leads to a lot of Buddy Hield wide open three-pointers in transition, which is such a joy to watch. But then on top of that, you think about the other things. Miles Turner and him had a really good pick and roll connection this past year in Indiana. I think that's going to get better with more time between those two players playing together. And then I think on top of that, the addition of Obi Toppin, who I referenced earlier, is one of my favorite young players. I think that he's going to be so good with Tyrese Halliburton. Benedict Matherin's a joy to watch, even though sometimes it makes you want to throw your remote through the TV because he dribbles with his head down, and there's no way he's ever going to see a driving kick. Unlike Tyrese Halliburton, he's still super fun to watch because some of the shots he makes, some of the plays he makes at the rim are just, you're like, wow, holy cow. And then not to mention Jarris Walker, who I think defensively is going to have some awesome moments this year. I think offensively he's going to come along faster than people are expecting too. I think Jarris Walker, a good player. And I think ultimately for Indiana, they're just going to be so fun to watch. They've got so much young talent. There's like 18 other guys I could mention. I do need to mention Bruce Brown because he's such a perfect signing here too for Indiana. He does all the stuff they needed him to do. If Ben Shepherd plays much this year, he's going to be awesome to watch. Okay, the Pacers killed it. The Pacers have like 14 good players on their roster. I'm excited to watch this team. They've got guys left and right that I would be like, yeah, I would love to have him on my favorite team, or him, or him, or him. This team is loaded with talent. They've got a lot of nice pieces. Now it's all about putting it together, turning it into wins, and really locking in on the defensive side of the floor. At number 7, and this should be no surprise to people, the Portland Trail Blazers are my 7th ranked team, and 7's been a nice number for them. Because 2 drafts ago, they drafted Shaedon Sharpe 7th overall, and that was really the beginning of why this Blazers team is so fun for me. Shaedon Sharpe during Summer League has literally done nothing but dunk on everybody, and then also hit step-back threes and just make outrageous play after outrageous play. Shaedon Sharpe is one of the premier League Pass players because when he's playing, you want to watch him. And then you add in the fact that they drafted, in my opinion, the second best player in the entire draft class in Scoot Henderson, who also is extremely fun to watch, and I think he's a better basketball mind than other people give him credit for. I think he has a really good understanding of creating for others, creating for himself, and kind of finding the blend of those two things. I still think there's going to be some work to be done there for him being like a high-end star point guard early on in his career. I don't think he's going to impact winning day one, but I think he's going to very quickly impact winning at some point in the near future, within a year or two. And because of that, Portland, even with Dame not playing for them, is going to be fantastically fun to watch. And I'm so excited. Matisse Thybulle, I'm glad that they kept him there. I would have loved for my Mavericks to get him, but ultimately, the Blazers, I think they've got some fun pieces. I think they've got an intriguing roster. They're not going to be good. In fact, they're going to be quite bad because they're young, but they're going to be a lot of fun to watch in the process. Number 6, and this team should probably be higher, honestly. The Oklahoma City Thunder, this team is an absolute treat to watch. One word, playmaking. This team can put it on the deck and create for others. Josh Giddey, of course, one of the better pick and roll players, one of the better facilitators right now, and probably one of the most daring passers in the NBA. If the window is literally the size of the basketball or smaller, he will still try to fit it in there, and half the time he's able to do it. It's unreal, his passing capability. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the best drivers of the basketball in the entire NBA. He's so fun to watch. Jalen Williams, the wing, such a great defender. Jalen Williams, the big, he'll step in there and take charges like none other. His charge number this year was unreal, and if you go back to my one-word summary from him a year ago in his draft, my one-word summary was charge. I knew he was going to step in and take a ton of charges. Led the league in as a rookie, which is unreal, by the way. Usually, rookies are the guys who worry most about making the right rotations and stepping in when they're supposed to. Yeah, he did it on day one of his career. And then you add in the fact that, oh, by the way, they're adding in the 10th pick in this year's draft, Cason Wallace, and the 2nd pick in last year's draft in Chet Holmgren, plus Vasilij Micic from EuroLeague, who's a former EuroLeague MVP. This Thunder team's got a ton of talent. They've got guys who can make snappy, quick decisions. They can all dribble, pass, and shoot. This Thunder team is going to be such a good, fun team to watch. But they're not higher than number 5 for me, the Golden State Warriors, because I think when it comes to player movement, one of the most fascinating moves in the offseason was Chris Paul to the Golden State Warriors. You think about the long-term beef there between Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Steph Curry breaks Chris Paul's ankle down on the baseline. All of those crazy things, right? There's been so many crazy moments between them. The Rockets-Warriors rivalry was always so great to watch and so fun. And now they're teammates. And that's going to be really fascinating. I think Chris Paul is going to be an off-the-bench player for them, which is also interesting. We've never seen Chris Paul in that role before. He probably becomes instantly the best backup point guard in the NBA. And I think for Golden State, it's going to be really good for their overall scheme and system. Just going from a player like Jordan Poole, who, yes, I know I hyped him up in the Wizards segment in this video. Listen, he was not good at all for Golden State. Golden State has such a, orchestrated, well thought out plan of attack of, look, the ball needs to move, swing, get to this spot. We're going to go into a dribble handoff, grenade action. We're going to do all of these fun basketball things. And it's one of the most cerebral plans of attack in the entire NBA. And then Jordan Poole would just go and be like a bull in a china shop and run into the paint and probably trip on his shoelace or something, and the ball would go flying out of bounds. Chris Paul won't do that. Chris Paul is going to make the smart, right decision a lot of the time, and I think that there's actually some viability of Chris Paul plus Steph Curry together. We'll see what that looks like. I'm also very interested to see Chris Paul with Kevon Looney. Can he turn Looney into a little bit more of a higher-end scoring threat out of the pick and roll, which we haven't seen Looney do that a ton. The Warriors haven't leaned into a ton of high pick and roll, but with Chris Paul, you're naturally going to do that a little bit more, I think. So the Warriors, even though they've got a really good scheme in place, I think there's going to be some adjustments to that. I think Chris Paul is going to elevate them in some areas that they're not great at, and I think he can still fit into the things that they are very, very good at. He's such a smart player, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Plus, one of my favorite sets to watch in the entire NBA is the post-split series out of Golden State. Just phenomenal basketball play design, and honestly one of the most enjoyable things to watch. My number 4 team here, and that is the Boston Celtics, because when you talk about style, this team is probably the most different than they were a year ago when they were the past season. For a team that doesn't move the ball very much, they traded their assist leader in Marcus Smart, which you might say, uh-oh, that doesn't sound good. But I don't think it's the end of the world as long as there's a concerted effort from the coaching staff, which is, by the way, more experienced now with some of their recent hirings, of, look, we need to move the ball a little bit more. We need to get into maybe some more sets, initiate some more plays, and not just run some isolation. I think the biggest difference from this team, first of all, offensively, you add in a post-scoring threat in Kristaps Porzingis, who ranked number 1 in the league last year in points per possession out of post-ups, even above Nikola Jokic. Listen, I don't think they're going to run 20 post-ups a game for Nikola Jokic, or for Kristaps Porzingis, excuse me. But I do think that the 7 to 10 that they do run a game probably will breed some pretty good results with the amount of shooting the Celtics typically have on the floor. And then not to mention, Kristaps Porzingis is one of the best rim protectors in the entire NBA. Looking at his numbers from last year, he was top 10 in defensive field goal percentage against at the rim. He was top 10 in blocked shots at the rim. He's one of the best rim protectors just period in the league. So again, Boston, who already has a good amount of rim protection with Robert Williams, they get bigger, they're going to block more shots, they're going to be a little bit better defending the rim, which I think is important when you're matching up against Milwaukee, Philly, and then also Miami, who got to the rim a decent amount against them as well. I just think ultimately for Boston, this team is interesting. With Kristaps Porzingis there, it's a huge stylistic change. A team that was very switch heavy probably plays exclusively more drop coverage this year, which is fun. We're going to see what this team looks like. Are Tatum and Brown and Derek White, are they going to be willing to run through screens? The answer is probably yes. I think they're going to work really hard. I think the Celtics team is going to be better than expected. I think the Celtics should probably be considered the favorite in the Eastern Conference right now, because I think Porzingis does make them better in a lot of ways. And I think the biggest area is you get a real sniping three-point shooting big man. And yes, I know Al Horford can knock down threes. Kristaps Porzingis is a quick trigger. Yeah, if I'm catching the ball, I'm letting it fly. And I think for Boston, that's really their scheme. That's their system. That's what they want to do on offense under Joe Mazzulla. I think it's going to be a really good fit for spacing out the court. They're going to be able to play more 5-out. They can coexist Williams plus Porzingis together offensively. Defensively is going to be the real challenge between those two. Maybe they go to a little bit more of a blitzing set, kind of like what Chris Finch did with the Wolves 2 years ago when Karl Anthony Towns was still starting at center. So the Celtics have a lot of options. We'll see what happens with them. But I think there's a real good amount of excitement that the Celtics should have coming into the season, and we'll see how good they are as a team. But I think that they have all the pieces they need to be a championship equity type of team. At number 3, this really hinges off of one player mostly, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. Victor Wembanyama, of course, is the transcendent superstar generational prospect that I am so excited to watch in San Antonio. Spurs fans, I've told you guys, listen, I'm planning on watching like 60 to 70 Spurs games this year. Heck, I might tune into all 82 if possible, because this team is just going to be such a joy to watch. They're going to be up and down. There's going to be some moments where they look great. There's going to be some moments where things aren't going right. And that's kind of the typical MO of a young team. But I think Victor Wembanyama, he's going to put up numbers. He's going to be unreal. He's going to be one of the best rim protectors in the NBA on day one. I think he's one of the best defenders in the NBA on day one. If he made an all-defensive team this year, I wouldn't be shocked. Now, I'm not betting on it. I think that there's going to be moments where, like, hey, he doesn't necessarily live up to, the blocks per game are going to be there. But, when you look at the film, there's going to be moments where he screws up drop coverage, or there's going to be moments where he screws up, oh, he was supposed to hedge here, or he didn't hedge, or he's supposed to blitz and he didn't. There's going to be moments like that. A lot of them, probably, because he's 19 years old. But I think he's got all of the skills and all of the work ethic to be one of the best players to have ever played basketball. Now, that's a long way to go to get there, but I think he has a really good baseline of tools and traits to get to that point pretty quickly in his career. I'm talking by year 3, year 4. And I think year 1's going to be such a joy to watch, because we're going to see all of that learning process kind of unfold as the Spurs go throughout their season. Not to mention Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, Trey Jones. I like that collection of players too. I think that they've got some nice pieces. We'll see what happens with Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham. I'm a little bit lower on those two. But nonetheless, the Spurs have some good young pieces. I think really the intriguing trio that I'm most excited to watch is kind of Keldon Johnson, Sohan, and Wembanyama defensively, and then also looking at Vassell offensively, taking a huge step forward again this season. My number 2 team, the Houston Rockets, and this really hinges off of Amen Thompson, who I think is going to be one of my most favorite players to watch in the league because of his ability to dissect the defense. He's one of the best passers I've evaluated. His size, usage of his size, and the fact that he puts such velocity on his passes, which I think really separated him from a lot of other prospects that I've ever evaluated when it comes to playmaking. He's got zippy, tight, on a line, pinpoint passes, unlike a lot of other prospects coming into the league. And at 20 years old, I think he's already a really good decision maker. I think he reads the floor well. He's selfless in his approach to the game. And I think guys like Jalen Green are going to take a huge step forward because of that. And then not to mention Ime Udoka, probably going to put a good competitive defense actually on the floor here, which has not been something you could say about Houston the last 3 years under Steven Silas. This team's going to be able to defend, hopefully. They've got the offensive punch. I think the Rockets are a real sleeper playoff team. Fred VanVleet makes them a lot better. Dylan Brooks makes them a lot better. Now, you could say, oh, those contracts are overpaid. Listen, I don't care about that. I'm talking about what team do I like to watch. I think the Rockets are going to be a lot of fun to watch. Dylan Brooks is must-watch television, because regardless if it's the third quarter and he's giving up 30 points, he's probably talking crap. That's fun. That's fun to watch. And then also Alperen Şengün, talent-wise, so fun. Tari Eason, one of my favorite young players in the league. Jabari Smith, I think, is going to have a really nice step forward this year. And I think a lot of that's going to be predicated off of Amen Thompson. I'm just really excited for the Rockets. And I think they're going to have such a fun, good season this year. And you might think, well, this guy sounds like he's from Texas. I'm not, but I do want to watch all of these Texas teams this year, because my number 1 team for League Pass this season is, of course, my favorite team, the Dallas Mavericks. I am so stoked to watch Dallas this year. Listen, I've been very, very critical of what Dallas has done throughout the past couple of years. I thought pretty much every single time that I would have made this decision, they made the exact opposite one. Trading for Kyrie Irving's a prime example. They ended up missing the playoffs last year. But this offseason, for the first time in a long time, I actually felt, look, Dallas did the things that I thought they should do. They found a way to get Grant Williams. They kept a good amount of their existing players. They were able to pick up pick 24 in the draft for taking in Rashawn Holmes. They got off of Davis Bertans, drafted Derek Lively, which was a huge need. They got Max Prosper, who I like for them as well. And then they've just made the right decisions. Getting Seth Curry back in the biannual exception, very, very smart. They still have their non-tax mid-level to use. We'll see if they end up using it or not. I think that they should still be aggressive and try and find a way to do something with it. If it means a sign and trade or an offer sheet for PJ Washington, go right ahead. I don't even care. Make it happen. I'm not the biggest PJ Washington guy, but sure, bring him in. I don't even care. The Mavs are going to be fun. Luka Doncic, one of the best players to watch in the league. He's just unreal. His talent level is immaculate. And then outside of that, too, Kyrie Irving, just a joy. So this team is fun. This team's going to have some really awesome moments. Jaden Hardy's going to have moments where he looks like a bedazzling young star. Josh Green's going to throw down some tomahawks, and there's going to be moments where this team is like, oh my gosh, they're not that good. But they're definitely better than they were last year. And I'm excited about that for the Mavericks, and they're my favorite team. Again, this list is subjective. I'm sure that your guys' favorite teams are at the top of your League Pass rankings. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe to the channel for more as well. Hit that subscribe button. Helps us out here a lot. And we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.